There is a number that doesn't make sense the first time you hear it. $65 billion. That's more than the GDP of most countries, more than the net worth of most Fortune 500 CEOs. And every single dollar of it was stolen, not hacked, not embezzled through some complex financial instrument, just stolen, directly from the accounts of real people who trusted one man with their life savings. And for 20 years, nobody noticed. His name was Bernie Madoff. And what he built wasn't just the largest financial fraud in human history. It was a masterclass in how trust and reputation can be weaponized against even the smartest people in the world. This is his story. And it's a warning that is more relevant today than ever. Bernie Madoff founded his investment firm in 1960 at just 22 years old with $5,000 saved from odd jobs. And before the fraud, before the scandal, Bernie Madoff was genuinely brilliant. He was one of the pioneers of electronic trading. His firm helped develop the technology that eventually became the NASDAQ stock exchange. He served as its chairman 3 times. He wasn't some outsider conning his way into finance. He was an insider, one of the most respected men on Wall Street. The kind of man regulators trusted, the kind of man whose name alone opened any door in New York. And that reputation was exactly the weapon he used. Because somewhere along the way, Bernie Madoff stopped running a legitimate investment firm and started running a Ponzi scheme, the most elegant, most patient, and most devastating Ponzi scheme the world has ever seen. Here's how it worked. Madoff told investors he was using a sophisticated strategy called split strike conversion. It sounded complex enough to be credible, but simple enough to explain at a dinner party. The idea was that he was buying blue-chip stocks and hedging them with options to generate steady, consistent returns, regardless of what the market was doing. It was a lie, every word of it. In reality, Madoff wasn't investing a single dollar. He was simply depositing client money into one giant bank account and using new investor deposits to pay returns to existing investors. No trades, no strategy, no positions. Just a bank account and a very convincing story. And the returns he promised weren't even outrageous. That was the genius of it. While other fraudsters promised 50% returns and attracted suspicion, Madoff promised 10 to 12% annually. Consistent, reliable, year after year after year. Even when the market crashed, even when every other fund was losing money, Madoff's clients always got their 10 to 12%. And that consistency was the hook. Because in finance, consistency is rarer than brilliance. Anyone can have a good year. Nobody has 45 consecutive years of positive returns. Except, apparently, Bernie Madoff. The clients he attracted weren't naive. His client list read like a who's who of global finance. Steven Spielberg invested with Madoff. Kevin Bacon invested with Madoff. Major banks, hedge funds, universities, and charities trusted him with billions. And the most insidious part? Madoff made it exclusive. You couldn't just walk in and give him your money. You had to be referred. You had to be vetted. You had to be worthy of the privilege of investing with Bernie Madoff. And that exclusivity made people want in even more, because nothing makes something more desirable than being told you might not be allowed to have it. For 20 years, the machine ran perfectly. Then 2008 arrived. When the financial crisis hit, investors around the world started pulling their money out of everything. Madoff's clients were no different. They started requesting redemptions. $7 billion worth in just a few weeks. Madoff only had $300 million in the account. On December 10, 2008, Bernie Madoff called his 2 sons into his apartment and told them everything. 20 years of fraud. $65 billion. All of it. His sons listened in silence. Then they called the FBI. The next morning, federal agents arrived at Madoff's penthouse. When they asked if there was an innocent explanation, Madoff said 3 words. There is not. He was arrested on the spot. 37,000 victims across 136 countries lost money. Charities were wiped out overnight. Retirees lost everything with no way to recover. Madoff's own son, Mark, took his own life 2 years after the arrest. Bernie Madoff was sentenced to 150 years in prison and died behind bars in 2021. But here's the part that should genuinely disturb you. The SEC had been warned about Bernie Madoff 9 times over 17 years. A financial analyst named Harry Markopoulos submitted detailed mathematical evidence as early as 1999, proving that Madoff's returns were statistically impossible. He handed them a roadmap. He titled one submission simply, "The world's largest hedge fund is a fraud." They ignored him every single time, because Madoff was too respected, too connected, too much of an insider for anyone to believe the accusations. One investigator later admitted they never even looked at his actual trading records because they were too intimidated to ask for them. Trust is not just a feeling. In finance, it is a weapon. And in the hands of someone willing to use it without conscience, it can hollow out $65 billion from 37,000 people without a single alarm going off for 2 decades. The most expensive lesson Bernie Madoff taught the world isn't about greed. It isn't about regulation. It's about the danger of believing something is safe simply because everyone else believes it's safe. Because the most dangerous investments in history were never the ones that looked risky. They were the ones that felt certain. And if there's one thing Bernie Madoff proved beyond any doubt, it's that certainty in finance is almost always the first sign that something is very, very wrong.